So you probably saw somewhere on social media, somewhere on the news, that there's a lot of people concerned about artificial intelligence in particular. They're very concerned about this new iteration of artificial intelligence with large language models, ChatGPT, and other similar software, including the ones where you can actually just give the machine a text and prompt it to create an image. Now, because of these concerns and because they're everywhere, you might be wondering, well, if the experts are concerned, if this person is concerned, should I be concerned as well? And here's an easy way to start answering that question, because it's not immediately obvious that we should concern ourselves, at least not to the degree that the media hype wants us to believe that we should be concerned. So here's one way in which we can start the question, should I be worried about AI? Well, first of all, you have to identify, what do you mean by AI? Do you mean large language models? Do you mean deep neural networks? Or do you mean good old-fashioned artificial intelligence? Which particular kind of method in artificial intelligence are you concerned about? Once you get that clear, then you can ask yourself, well, which harms am I blaming it for, right? So you might be thinking about misinformation, the capacity to create text and disseminate it all over the place through large language models and, large language models connected to the internet or connected to other sources of communication. So let's put misinformation or disinformation as the harm that you're worried about. And then let's put large language models on the other side, right? So then now you're worried, I'm worried about this one thing, this harm, concerning this technology. And now you can ask two questions. You have your harm identified, you have your technology identified, and the following questions are the ones that are going to guide you to see how much you can blame the technology for that harm or whether you can to start with. Ask yourself the following: is the technology necessary for the harm to arise? Meaning, can the harm arise even if that technology wasn't around? You might find that no, right? For example, misinformation or disinformation could have arisen through other means, through other technologies. So this particular technology doesn't seem to be necessary for misinformation or disinformation to exist. The second question that you want to ask yourself is, well, is this technology sufficient to bring about that harm? Meaning, just because the technology exists, it already brings about that harm, right? Can the technology exist without the harm? Can the technology be different than what it is right now? So now you have 4 conceptual tools at your disposal, right? The first one is try to identify what the harms that you're concerned about are. Second, try to identify which particular technology you're talking about or you're concerned about. Third, ask yourself whether the technology is necessary to bring about that harm. And fourth, ask yourself whether the technology is sufficient for the harm to exist. Because in some instances, you might find that the technology that you're blaming for something is neither sufficient, meaning just because it exists doesn't mean that the harm will arise, nor necessary. It might not be necessary because other things can bring it about. So the harm does not need for the technology to exist to arise. And in that case, well, maybe you're blaming the technology for the wrong thing. So that's the first step. You might also find that sometimes you got the harm incorrectly. You didn't really target it well. So you might think, are large language models to blame for the harm of misinformation and disinformation? And we kind of saw that it's not immediately clear because large language models are neither necessary nor sufficient for the harm of misinformation and disinformation to arise. Okay, but what if we asked about a different harm? What if we asked, are large language models to blame for the ease of creation of misinformation? That's a different, more targeted harm. We can go back and ask the same questions and might find that the answers are different, right? So large language models, in fact, do make it a lot easier for you to produce text. In a matter of seconds, a paragraph that could have taken you 20 minutes can be written. So there we have a kind of harm that we identified, mainly the ease of creation of misinformation, and we can say, are large language models responsible So I hope at the very least this one conceptual tool of asking yourself, first of all, do I have my harms clear? Do I have my particular technology identified? And then asking whether the technology is sufficient and or necessary for the harms to arise. I hope that conceptual tool helps you start asking yourself whether you should be concerned about AI methods in a clearer, more precise way.